This video was made possible by an anonymous source who contacted me last year and told me to look at the small automotive channel, Hemmings. They'd nearly tripled their views in just a few weeks. Rapid improvement usually means spending a lot of money, launching a new series, for example, and they'd done exactly that.
On this episode of The House of Muscle, the shirt that I'm wearing right now says The House of Muscle. We're on location for another shoot for The House of Muscle.
But something in the data was fishy. Now, even if you are really into cars, if you're under 40, you might have never heard of Hemmings, also known as Hemmings Motor News. That started in the 1950s as an auto magazine and car marketplace. Each issue was split between journalistic articles and listings of cars for sale. Fast forward 70 years and they're basically still doing that, just in digital form. They have a website with cars for sale, auctions, and articles, as well as a YouTube channel. They focus mostly on vintage and classic cars, stuff like American Muscle, so you can probably guess the age of their audience. According to the press kit for their printed magazine, yes, they still have one, 97% of that audience is over 55, but that is a rapidly growing segment of YouTube viewers, and they're commercially very valuable. There are fewer content creators serving that audience, so I've seen advertisers pay 30% more just to be featured in content reaching that audience. Even though Hemmings reaches that valuable older audience, as a content creation company, their following isn't very big. They only have about 60,000 YouTube subscribers and average around 25,000 views per video. They're not a large publicly traded company like Haggerty, and they don't have a media empire like Motor Trend, but Hemmings isn't exactly small. They have over a dozen people working on content creation and even more dedicated to marketing. And they clearly spend money on YouTube. But their channel is underperforming relative to their investment. At their current rate of growth, it would take them 40 years or so to get to where Car and Driver is now, and Car and Driver is not even in the top 100 of automotive YouTube channels. But the company president has said they are really focusing on digital content and on growing their audience by being disruptors in the industry. Yeah, he's one of those disruption guys. This hasn't worked out for them so far, and it's not hard to see why. Disruption requires creating what's new, what's next, and to figure that out, at a minimum, you have to understand what's past and what's current. And Hemmings' YouTube channel is run like a TV channel. They have named series with title sponsors and TV-like production values.
On this episode of Tested, presented by American Collectors Insurance, welcome to Square Body Rehab. On this episode of The House of Muscle,
hello and welcome to Cars That Matter.
You're not disrupting anything by doing stuff everyone else in your industry has stopped doing because it stopped working. A lot of channel owners wonder why their content is failing even though they spend a ton of money on it and hire video professionals with decades of experience, but sometimes that's the problem. These owners and experienced professionals see something that looks like a Discovery Channel show and think that's good TV, but they haven't kept up with what works on YouTube, and expensive, slickly produced content doesn't work if it's in an outdated style. There are other things that Hemmings is getting wrong if they want to succeed at YouTube, but the old-fashionedness of Hemmings' content is what first made me suspicious about their views tripling in just a matter of weeks. That rapid increase felt off, and I hate to profile, but Hemmings is a type of channel that is more likely than others to pay for views. With the exception of Motor Trend, the largest and most successful automotive channels like Chris Fix, Mighty Car Mods, Throttle House, and even Donut don't pay for views, they get paid for them. Their whole business model depends upon getting as many organic views as possible. Smaller channels will sometimes pay for views because they think it's a shortcut to growth, a way to catch up to the big boys, but large numbers of paid views can be expensive, so generally the only small channels who buy views are established businesses who can afford it, like Hemmings. And it doesn't actually work.
Sure, we got a bunch of views very quickly, but they immediately died and dropped off. Effectively, we were getting less than a tenth of what we were averaging every single day after paying for adverts. We've effectively paid to have this video be killed.
Buying views isn't a viable strategy for catching up to more successful channels. The only thing that does that is getting good at YouTube. Of course, when an expert tells people who have money that money won't solve their problem, they tend not to believe it. So the small channels that buy views tend to be run by people who also have money and are somewhat naive about YouTube. So, is Hemmings naive about YouTube? Well, company president Jonathan Shaw has said their plan to disrupt automotive media is a new content type he's called edutainment. This guy is substantially younger than me. How in the Now, I'm relatively certain that Shaw doesn't think he invented that term. Edutainment is simply an old-fashioned word for a type of content that remains popular, but calling modern content edutainment kind of outs you as someone who doesn't know the industry, where we're more likely to call that type of video an explainer. And we're definitely not going to believe or claim that this is something new. It's what hundreds of automotive YouTube channels are already doing, some for 20 years. Describing what Hemmings is doing as disruptive or even new or innovative seems incredibly naive, especially because probably the most successful and noteworthy thing they did recently is resurrect House of Muscle, a canceled Motor Trend show from almost 10 years ago. So Hemmings leadership has aspirations of running with the big boys of automotive YouTube, but doesn't really have their shit together. That makes them a likely candidate to buy views. So let's take a look at the data and see what we find. Everything I'm going to show you is from ViewStats, a website created by developers working for Mr. Beast. ViewStats works by logging publicly accessible data for a large number of YouTube channels. It tracks numbers of views, comments, likes, as well as title and thumbnail changes, and it generates really straightforward representations of that data like graphs showing views over time. What I found when I looked into Hemmings data was a large number of videos that had the same unusual patterns. The engagement numbers didn't make sense, for example. There were too few likes and comments for the number of views, not what you'd expect from an organic audience. And the daily views would go from single digits to thousands overnight. Those would maintain oddly consistent views for a very specific period of time, say exactly 28 days, then abruptly drop back into single digits. Organic views produced by the YouTube algorithm and human viewers don't ordinarily look like this. Changes in the rate of views aren't typically that abrupt. They happen more gradually, with views ramping up and slowing down to form curves. It's statistically possible to get a graph like this from organic views, it's just incredibly unlikely. So if you see that same unlikely pattern for dozens of videos on a single channel, the most reasonable explanation is that they're paying for views on those videos. Because this is exactly what you find on channels that we know are paying for views: automakers. Automakers regularly post videos on their YouTube channels, then buy views for those videos because those are just ads. And all of those have the same data footprint you see in the Hemmings videos, like and comment numbers that are unusually low and that distinctive spike and crash in the views. But something that was funny about the Hemmings videos is that all of them crashed right around the same day, December 18th. It's almost as if someone figured out that something shady was going on, or that some plan had failed and abruptly shut it down. And the following month, channel-wide views dropped to 1/3 of what they were before Hemmings started buying views. This is what I mean when I say buying views doesn't help a channel grow. Once you stop buying, the whole channel can crash. If you're an automaker, you don't really care about that. You're not on YouTube to get organic views. But if you're a content creator, this could be a nightmare scenario, leaving you worse off than you were before. That's exactly what happened to Hemmings, but maybe that's because they got caught buying views illegitimately. For many of the Hemmings videos, on the day that the views crash, they have negative total views. There's a specific reason why you see negative views after a period of paid views. I talk about that more in the video where I do a deep dive into the data side of all this. But the core reason is a YouTube algorithm that detects and removes illegitimate views. Not all paid views are created equal. Some are produced by YouTube promotion or Google ads. That's when a channel pays for their video to appear among the suggested videos or as a pre-roll ad when you click on something else. Other paid views come from click farms. Those are large centers containing thousands of devices logged into YouTube accounts. Click farms will happily sell anyone a huge number of views from those devices, and you can get 100,000 views for $300 or less. That's about 95% cheaper than buying them legitimately. But click farm views are a violation of YouTube's terms of service. They can get a channel shut down. So no legitimate business uses click farms unless they're incredibly stupid, and I don't think Hemmings is that naive. And those negative daily view totals don't necessarily mean a video has click farm views. The illegitimate view algorithm also removes stuff like accidental duplicates and views from comment spam bots. Spam bots are programmed to leave comments on popular videos, so the more real views a video has, the more illegitimate views it's likely to have as well. That removal process takes a little while to run, so if you have 3,000 views on Monday, the illegitimate view process might decide 30 of those are spam, but won't figure that out until Tuesday. So did Hemmings' channel crash because they were paying for illegitimate views and got caught? It seems unlikely. I'm inclined to think they were buying views the legit way because they're a legitimate business. I'm inclined to say innocent until proven guilty, but with one slight hesitation. Only a company or person who doesn't know what they're doing would rely on illegitimate views. And the thing is, the signs that Hemmings or someone at Hemmings doesn't know what they're doing start stacking up once you dig further into the data. Whoever is running their YouTube never A/B tests thumbnails. That's an automated tool built into YouTube where you upload several thumbnails and YouTube figures out which one performs the best for your video. Hemmings also rarely changes titles to try and expand a video's audience, but when they do, they change them too frequently. Each title change can slightly lower a video's performance as the recommendation algorithm adapts to the new title. Another issue is that almost all Hemmings videos have a paying sponsor, but many of them were uploaded by someone who doesn't check the paid promotion box. That puts this little tag at the beginning of the video so that viewers know some part of the video is sponsored. Not checking that box is a YouTube Terms of Service violation that can get a channel banned, and not telling people that an ad is an ad is also a Federal Trade Commission violation with a potential maximum fine of $53,000 per ad per day. If you're running a YouTube channel, this is stuff you need to know. Now, I've criticized the president of Hemmings for statements that suggest he's naive about automotive YouTube, but clearly he isn't the one running the YouTube channel. I'd be stunned if any executive knew the nuances of thumbnail and title testing, knew about the paid promotion checkbox, what click farms are, or really anything about YouTube's terms of service. This is stuff that professional YouTubers know from their time spent getting good at YouTube. You don't learn this with an MBA. You just learn to say disruption every 2 minutes as though that's a good thing and not a synonym for creating problems. But suppose you aren't the boss and instead work for a company that has a YouTube channel, and your boss, who doesn't actually know a whole lot about YouTube, says increase views or you're fired. You could buy click farm views, show your boss the numbers, and your job is saved, at least temporarily, because a click farm will let anyone buy views for any video. You don't need to be the owner of that video. In theory, since buying click farm views is a terms of service violation, it could even be possible to use those to sabotage another channel. There's a term for this, click bombing, but I've never seen proof that anyone's pulled it off. So it's possible that someone at Hemmings who is responsible for the YouTube channel was told the general plan, grow the channel, and their boss, who doesn't understand YouTube, has completely unrealistic expectations for that. That's pretty common. Someone recently showed me a job posting for a YouTube channel manager. They wanted someone who could grow their channel from 71,000 monthly views to 4 million views in 12 weeks. That kind of growth does happen from time to time through a combination of skill and luck, but realistically, the only way to make that happen guaranteed is buying views. Another possibility is that someone at Hemmings was told to grow the channel and doesn't actually know how to do that. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Very few people working in automotive media have also worked in YouTube, and succeeding at that isn't something you can figure out quickly on your own. In spite of all my criticisms of how Hemmings handles their YouTube presence, I have no reason to believe the company or anyone there is doing anything ethically wrong, and I haven't found a reliable way to discriminate between click farm views and legitimate views in publicly available data. They probably just tried a bad growth strategy and now they're suffering the consequences. And you can see those consequences clearly in the data. Here's Hemmings' total views for 12 months. Note the major increase in November. That's when you start to see the evidence of paid views on the individual videos. Then in December, total views increase even further as they have more paid views. But in January, when they were no longer paying for views, channel-wide views dropped to 1/3 of what they were before Hemmings started buying. What happened here demonstrates the core problem with paid views and why they'll never help a channel to catch up with more successful ones. In spite of the cost, paid views are low-value views. A high-value view is produced when a viewer clicks on a title and thumbnail and watches a video for a decent amount of time. That tells YouTube's recommendation algorithm that this is a good video, that it satisfies the viewer. Satisfaction and dissatisfaction indicators are how the recommendation algorithm works, and paid views are likely to elicit dissatisfaction indicators. Suppose you have your video play as a pre-roll ad. Then your content is the thing standing between a viewer and what they actually want to watch. Psychologically, that's not a good way to get someone to like you. And paid views generate really short watch times, which is the worst indicator indicator of all. Now, YouTube claims their recommendation algorithm ignores indicators that result from paid views, at least from legitimate ones. That means those views can't hurt an individual video's performance with the organic recommendation algorithm. But if what YouTube claims is true, it also means paid views can't help that performance either. Paying for views can't boost a video. And the recommendation algorithm doesn't ultimately decide what a human viewer watches. It only makes recommendations. So you really can't ignore the psychological impact of your content interrupting what someone is trying to watch. Paid views really can make people dislike your channel and choose not to watch it later. Obviously, that's bad for growth. Now, click-farm views take this all to the next level because those views are definitely not ignored by the YouTube algorithm. Those are typically produced by an automated script that links directly to the video. The device controlled by that script, often a mobile phone, spends about 30 seconds letting the video play with a small amount of randomness built in to try and trick the illegitimate view detector. Then that device moves on to the next video in its script. That short view duration maximizes the click-farm's revenue, with each device watching videos as quickly as possible. But thousands of short duration views are basically the strongest dissatisfaction signal a video can have. It tells YouTube your video isn't good, that maybe it's even clickbait. So illegitimate paid views produce a reduction in organic views as your video is recommended less. And even though legitimate views don't hurt individual videos that same way, they don't help, and they can alienate potential audiences. If you've paid for views for nearly every video on your channel, like Hemmings did, then the entire channel will be affected. So as soon as they stopped paying, their views cratered. It's going to take them months to dig themselves out of that hole, possibly years if they don't figure out how to actually get good at YouTube. And the consequences of paying for views don't end there. You remember that nearly all of those Hemmings videos have sponsors. Many sponsor contracts are written so the sponsor pays based on the number of views, and artificially inflating those numbers can be a contract violation. But I'll leave you with the last thing that makes me suspect folks at Hemmings maybe don't pay attention to how YouTube works or what's going on in that space. During the course of my investigation, I made attempts to contact several people at Hemmings, someone working directly on their YouTube content, someone in their media relations department, and the leadership that's responsible for the media side of Hemmings. I tracked down phone numbers and sent text messages and made calls. I sent DMs on Instagram, and I messaged on LinkedIn. I included a great deal of detail about what I'd found, about the negative impact paid views would and did have on their channel's performance, about possible terms of service violations and sponsor issues, and the possibility that someone inside the organization was making decisions that hurt their channel and content. I gave them every opportunity to tell their side of things, to talk about their actual strategy, what happened, what they learned, what they were going to do next, and to let the world know they weren't doing anything shady. And they ignored me because who am I, right? I'm just some YouTuber called AutoT. Thanks for watching.